You know, it's been a while, but welcome back to Mock Draft Monday. I can't say that these are going to be every week, but as the season progresses, it probably does end up getting to that point. I will also say that this current draft order is based on Super Bowl odds. If we did current record in week 3, is it equally likely that the Panthers and the Ravens, both 0-2, will be picking at number 1 overall? I don't think it is. So I chose to do based on current Super Bowl odds. But this is a very interesting Mock Draft Monday because, well, one, it's so early in the year. You know, I think a lot of fans get caught in the trap of, oh, we absolutely need to take this position. You know, they get so caught up with, we need a cornerback. We have to take a corner. There's a lot of ways to fill positional needs, right? There's free agency. There's trading for a player. There is outside of the first round in the NFL draft. So unless you're taking a QB, you're not necessarily locked into that in the first round. You also have to consider that players might not have signed extensions up to this point. Players will be free agents, so even if they're on the team now, are they going to be next year, which is what the NFL draft is all about here. So, a couple of housekeeping things out of the way, and let's talk about number 1. The Panthers are on the board, and this is a little weird because Bryce Young was benched today. He will not be the starting quarterback for at least week 3, and he hasn't looked good, by the way. He wasn't great last year. The offense was a disaster last year, so I get that, right? Minimal weapons, terrible O-line, terrible offensive structure. You can't expect him to be good in that. However, they've upgraded a bit in 2024, and even though the structure still, there's a lot of craziness going on, even though they've upgraded their O-line, it was still not amazing, and their receiving core, which is still not amazing. You'd want him to play better individually, and that has not been the case. So at least by starting Andy Dalton, you take him out of the fire for a minute to just relax. But it's still very weird that after 2 weeks, it's like, we've seen enough, and I don't know if that's from the top. I don't know if Tepper's like, get Bryce Young out of here. I want to see a win. He doesn't help us do that. But I just think it's crazy. Number 1 overall pick from last year already just, boom, not the starter after 2 weeks with a new head coach in a completely new offense. So it's bizarre, but you got to recognize that Dave Canales, new head coach of the Panthers, is not necessarily tied to Bryce Young, was not there when that pick came through. And I think the Panthers could be in the market for a QB. Is the Bryce Young experiment already over? Things move fast in the modern NFL, and I think that it could be. And currently, I think Carson Beck is the front runner to be the first quarterback selected. So if the Panthers are picking at number 1, you're probably taking a QB, right? Carson Beck's really, really solid. We really haven't seen him do anything transcendent yet as a player, but he's got very good size. He's got a very solid arm. He does the right things. He goes, to the right place with the football, and that's extremely valuable in the NFL. It's cool to see hero ball like we saw with Bryce Young at Alabama and Caleb Williams at USC, and those can separate quarterbacks at the next level, but you need to be able to run the offense. And Carson Beck is capable of doing that, and he's got, top 10 QB in the league type upside if things go right. Is he going to end up reaching that? It's really tough to tell with QBs, but he's got that type of upside. Top 10 or 15, I think, is not unreasonable, and that's a solid starter. That can be, a winning type quarterback. I like Carson Beck as a player. And then with the Giants at number 2, it's been time. It was time in the 2019 draft before they drafted Daniel Jones to move on from Daniel Jones, or the moment they drafted him. But the Giants need a quarterback. And again, if you're picking this high, even though I said at the start, hey, you don't need to lock yourself into one position, but if you're picking this high, it's going to be your chance to take a QB. And while at this early stage in 2024, what I will say about the QB class, it's not as good as it was last year at this point. Now, will players take steps up and take leaps and establish themselves? That's a huge possibility. We saw it last year with Jaden Daniels. It could happen. Carson Beck could really elevate. Shadur Sanders, Connor Wigman, who's been off to a really bad start. Quinn Ewers was great, but then he just got injured, and that's been a big story of his collegiate career so far. Jalen Milroe's playing great so far, and he's got a really interesting skill set. He doesn't throw over the middle of the field at all. He's not a short or intermediate guy. He is a scramble/bomb it deep guy, but he's very good at those things. So he's an interesting prospect. And then you look at Cam Ward, Miller Moss, Garrett Nussmeier. These are guys that could end up being first-round picks. Ward's got crazy potential. He's really great out of structure. He's a really solid athlete. And then we saw in the USC-LSU game, these quarterbacks were locked in. Nussmeier is, I think, particularly quite good, but Miller Moss played really well. And, I mean, Jackson Dart's having a great year. Drew Aller's having a great year. Am I going to fall into that trap again? Donovan Smith is a great athlete. There's a lot of time left. Not that Smith is going to be a first-round pick. But anyway, I think the Giants would highly consider quarterback. Daniel Jones would be going into the final year of his deal. You can cut him and save money overall after this year. There still is a cap hit, but it's not significant enough to where the Giants are still attached to Daniel Jones. I'm going to go with the Texas Longhorn. Hook 'em. New #1 team in the country. Gotta love it. Of course, as a big Texas fan, I do. Some people probably are not huge fans of it. But yeah, I think the Giants would definitely consider taking Quinn Ewers. When everything's right, Quinn Ewers is a phenomenal player. There are things that can get him out of sync. His footwork becomes bad. He's not accurate. He makes some boneheaded decisions. He's only 20, 21 years old. I mean, that kind of thing can happen. He's still extremely young. He's shown flashes of brilliance. The thing that scares me about Quinn is he just doesn't really drive the football the way you want to see. He's got crazy arm talent, but we just don't see it enough. The Texas offense with Steve Sarkisian, it's a lot of RPO, a lot of screens, a lot of shallow crossers, where Quinn's just kind of lobbing the ball in there, and then when he does try to extend deep down the field, he doesn't really have the deep ball accuracy. So I do worry about evaluating players in the Texas offense. However, Quinn Ewers diced up Michigan. He's a very solid player. If he continues to take strides, he's going to be in this first quarterback off the board discussion. Now, whether or not that's the Giants or whoever at 2, or whether he's even a first-round pick at all, remains to be seen. His health really concerns me. It's a guy who's really experienced injuries every single year of his career that he's played. That's concerning. Durability is a problem for Quinn Ewers, and you worry about taking a player that high in the draft. I'll just say that. At number 3, I have the Denver Broncos. We're going to go T-Mac, Teteroa McMillan from Arizona. He's got exceptional size. This is a wide receiver 1. Great hands. He's actually quite good after the catch. And when you take a guy who's 6'5", 215, that can move the way he does, he's not an exceptional athlete, but very good for his size. People ask for comps all the time, and I don't really love those, but it's in the same way that Drake London was the first receiver off the board in his class. T-Mac has a similar type skill set, and he does use his size to his advantage. He's a really, really good player. I think a future wide receiver 1, ex-receiver in the NFL. And if you're going to continue to try and build around Bo Nix, you need to get him some legitimate weapons. You lose Jerry Jeudy, you're very comfortable doing that. But you need guys that are actually capable of being out there as ball winners, but also field stretchers. McMillan is certainly a ball winner. That's somebody that can go up and just get the football. And that's wide receiver 1 type potential. Get that you have Cortland Sutton. But I think Teteroa McMillan is right now wide receiver 1 in this draft class. I've got a lot of questions about where we're going to see Luther Burden or Travis Hunter go. But right now, I think T-Mac is the cleanest wide receiver prospect as we get to the Patriots at number 4. I got him going Kelvin Banks. The top 3 tackles, I think, are a step above everybody else. That's Will Campbell, Kelvin Banks, and Emory Jones. I might even lean Emory Jones. The thing that maybe devalues him slightly is that he's a right tackle, whereas Will Campbell, Kelvin Banks are left tackles. And that's not to say that Emory Jones couldn't move over. He's athletic enough to do so. But we also see right tackles go very high in the draft nowadays. It's almost 50-50 between left tackles and right tackles as top 10 picks, which is very interesting over like the past 5 or 10 years. I think out of the last 10 first-round tackles, about 5 of them are right tackles, which is very interesting. But yeah, so I think Emory Jones could be the first one off the board. But today we're going to go with Kelvin Banks Jr. I think the Patriots are going to be in the market for a left tackle. I like Mike Onwenu over on that right side. And I think Kelvin Banks, of course, hook him, is in play to be the first tackle off the board. Is this Texas bias for me to put 2 Texas players in the top 4? Maybe a little bit, but it's quite plausible. They're very, very good players. And the Patriots just could use a left tackle of the future. You're going to build around Drake May. I think you took big strides with upgrading that receiver room and bringing in Jalen Polk, for example. It's not amazing. It wouldn't stop you necessarily from taking a receiver at number 4 if you wanted to do that, provided the right one was available. But I think tackle's a better decision here for New England. Titans at number 5. Got a bunch of different needs. This is really not a very good team. But right tackle is a disaster. I like the potential of J.C. Latham of the future. Had a very good week 2 after a not good week 1. He's going to be your left tackle. Let's get him a right tackle and plug and play. I'm going with the uber athletic Emory Jones from LSU. I think he's really, really good. When I was watching LSU last year, everyone talks up Will Campbell, who's a very good player in his own right. But the one that continued to flash for me at tackle was Emory Jones Jr. And I think he is in play, as I mentioned, to be the first one off the board. And he's a plug-and-play right tackle here for the Titans. Could also potentially be a guard on the right team, but I think he's certainly big enough and athletic enough to stick at right tackle at 6'6", 315. That's almost like prototypical tackle size. Commanders at number 6. The Commanders are another team who's on the right track, it would appear. You've got a very good front, especially on the interior, even if edge isn't quite up to the same standard. And this could totally be an edge rusher, but corner is also not very good. And Will Johnson might just be the best player in the draft. He is, I think, certainly cornerback number 1. And there are some really good ones in this class. Travis Hunter, but is he a receiver? Is he a corner? There's more money to be had at wide receiver. Does that impact what he wants to play in the NFL? We'll see, right? And then, of course, you have Benjamin Morrison. We'll talk about the corner class. It's quite good. I'm really excited about Siobhan Ravel. We'll talk about him. Tacario Davis. These corners have exceptional size. Ravel is 6'3". Tacario Davis is even taller. I think it's 6'4". Although, according to PFF, not off to a great start in 2024 after a great 2023. Benjamin Morrison, 6 foot. Travis Hunter, 6'1". These corners are big corners. 6'2" for Will Johnson. And that's the modern meta. Tall, long, and athletic. And there are a lot of those guys in this class. Raiders at number 7. Again, I still mentioned the thing at the start with the positions, but it changes a bit when you need a quarterback. And I don't know that the Raiders are necessarily locked into taking a QB. It kind of depends on where they're picking, depends on what the quarterback class ends up looking like. But I think Shedeur Sanders is kind of a safe projection at this point. I think he could certainly end up being a first-round pick. I hate to say it, I don't really like a lot of what's happening at Colorado. I'm not really sold on that program, obviously. But I also don't like that Shedeur Sanders is throwing his teammates under the bus. And, I mean, refusing to shake hands after the game is kind of weird, but I don't really care about that. But throwing your offensive line under the bus is, kind of insane to do, in my opinion. Doesn't really show a lot of leadership qualities. And there are, things to do with the intangibles and personality. And that matters a lot more than maybe anything else at quarterback for how teams evaluate. Obviously, film is entirely important, but you got to check the personality boxes. Teams don't want a Jamarcus Russell or a Johnny Manziel, right? They want someone that they can really count on and feel confident in. And is that going to be Shedeur Sanders? I don't know. Because it doesn't matter that Deion Sanders is your dad. NFL teams don't care about that. They want a game changer and a leader and someone that can flip their franchise if they're taking a quarterback high enough. And I don't know. Shedeur Sanders is kind of like some red flags being thrown out there, but he's certainly very talented, quite a good arm. But, we'll see what ends up happening, right? It's a long way between now and April, and I think you do have to kind of cut these guys some slack when they're 20, 21 years old. Who is super mature at that age? Not maybe a ton of guys, except for Drake May, and I love Drake May. Anyway, whatever. There are guys, obviously, and those are the guys that are different. Andrew Luck is in that same type of conversation. I think Lamar Jackson is somebody that you can really count on. Russell Wilson had big personality and big leadership, even if it's a little bit corny at times, right? But, these are things that can create success. Obviously, on-field results, super important as well. At number 8, Indianapolis Colts. Got them going with Travis Hunter. I don't necessarily know that they need a receiver here, but they do need corner. And Travis Hunter, I don't know what his NFL role is going to be. He is just a super talented player. I think he's going to be good at whatever he chooses. He's a freak athlete with freak football ability. His instincts are insane. He is, I think, an unbelievable type player that we've really never seen someone do both sides of the ball at the level that he's doing. He's really carrying Colorado. It's crazy that any team targets him in coverage or, kind of sleeps on him on offense. Not that that's really happening, but why target him when you have an entire secondary that you can abuse that's not Travis Hunter? It's like you're asking for an interception if you're throwing his way. It happens far too often. That doesn't, mean don't ever throw in his direction whatsoever, because guys like Alec Iomenor had a great game against him, for example, right? But anyway, it's like if you can pick your poison, I would go somewhere else to a less damaging poison. I wouldn't target Travis Hunter hardly ever if I were an offense going up against him. He's just a special type of player is what I'm getting at, and that type of guy is going to go top 10. It's just to who and what role do you think they're going to end up playing? It's hard to say at this point. At number 9, I have the Arizona Cardinals going with Mason Graham. Another guy in the mix as the best player in this draft. I really like the edge class as well. It's just I struggle to get these guys off the board, and this is something that is challenging in what is a really, really good, really deep draft class, which is different than last year. Last class was a little bit shallow. This one's incredibly deep. There are a bunch of really, really good players. And especially at the top here, it's like, oh man, is an edge rusher not going to go top 10? There are some really good edge rushers. Abdul Carter is phenomenal. I know a lot of people love Nick Scorton. Michael Williams has crazy potential. James Pierce has elite burst. He's really just got a ton of juice off the edge, but kind of off to a bit of a slow start in 2024. This class is really, really fun. I mean, you look at some of the linebackers, too, that are like these hybrid guys, like Jalen Walker. These guys could end up going quite high. It's a really, really fun class, but I don't have anyone going in the top 10 here, so it's a little bit difficult. But, Graham is in that mix of a guy that I could see being a top 2 or 3 pick, but here, because quarterbacks and offense mainly go in the top 10, he falls a little bit, but is incredibly talented, a game wrecker on the interior, and that's something the Cardinals could really desperately use. At number 10, I got Will Campbell falling a little bit, but I think the Rams jump all over it. You could absolutely consider upgrading tackle. I think quarterback's even in play with Stafford getting up there in age, but Will Campbell falls to 10. I think you take Will Campbell. Now, he does struggle against some of the more athletic edge rushers, especially those with twitch and bend, NFL caliber guys. But his tape is mostly very good, and I think he's absolutely in the mix to be a top 5 or 10 player off the board for sure. Jags at number 11, have them going with Benjamin Morrison. Cornerback just is a position that I could see them upgrading, but I really, really would love their secondary with Tyson Campbell on the outside and Benjamin Morrison on the outside. I look on the offense, and I think the O-line is something that could be considered as well. I think wide receiver is going to be set. I really like Trevor Lawrence and ETN in the backfield. But for me, I like Benjamin Morrison's value a lot here, and that ends up being the pick. Bears at number 12. We're going to the interior of the offensive line, and that is going to be Jonah Savanaia, is I believe how that's pronounced. Savanaia. I believe that's it. It's tough. I'm doing my best. It's early in the cycle. I'll nail it down the line. Savanaia, as I'm 90% sure. He's someone that has experience at both guard and tackle, kind of flip-flop last year at Arizona. Really, really good. Excellent size as well at 6'5", 336 pounds. I think really projects to the interior. And that, if you watched the Bears game last night, really, really, really bad. So it says tackle, but this is probably an NFL guard, and that's something the Bears could really look to get. It's not a great interior class, maybe looking at Tyler Booker as the next best, and then center. Don't really see anyone of particular interest at this stage, and that will change as we get deeper into the year. But right now, Savanaia appears to be the best in the class on the interior to me, and I'm not an offensive line expert. I consult people that know more than me in that regard. You try to learn more with scouting and draft evaluation every single year. And Savanaia appears to be the best right now, but things will change, and there could be a center that ends up getting some first-round buzz at some point, but we don't really ever see one go nearly as high as 12. So is this kind of a picking the best player available? Not necessarily, although he's in this range. He's a really, really good player, but this is trying to marry kind of that huge need along with the player. But we have some amazing talent that's going to be available down the board as a result of a pick like that. At number 13, have the Vikings going Siobhan Revell from East Carolina, keeping those colors. First round pick for ECU since Chris Johnson in the late 2000s. Siobhan Revell, talked about it very briefly. Think about like a Quinyon Mitchell type player, where he's a group of 5 guy. He had Toledo last year, now East Carolina with Revell. It doesn't necessarily matter that he goes to ECU. At certain positions, I really don't care about competition. It's important a little bit, and you want to see what they do against the best competition, but there are some positions like corner, like edge, for example, like, I think not necessarily quarterback, but I think corner and edge maybe are the two that stand out, where it's not exactly, are you winning, but how you're doing it. Corner is a position where you're looking at size and footwork, depending. I think like length is super important for getting your hands on a receiver really early. You're able to redirect and press. And Siobhan Rail is somebody that has really good movement skills at his size. He's got a ton of speed, but there are certain positions, like on the edge, for example. Part of what really drew me to Khalil Mack in the first year I really got into this, before I really knew anything, but I knew Khalil Mack was really good. He wasn't just winning with speed as a speed rusher or power with a bull rush. He was using his hands to win. That's the type of thing that translates. And at corner, you're not necessarily saying, hey, are they shutting down their competition? In group of five, you're maybe not playing a receiver who has any ability to get open whatsoever, but it's how they're doing it. And I think Siobhan Ravel is somebody that his game should translate to the next level. I think about Quinyon Mitchell. When you have the size and movement abilities that Siobhan Ravel does, that ends up being a first-round pick. Again, we saw it last year with Quinyon Mitchell. I think Ravel is somebody that has a ton of hype right now as a prospect, and for good reason. Had a big pick 6 last week as well. And he's someone who I think is going to get a lot more hype along the line. So I would say, similarly to the way we kind of shouted out Quinyon Mitchell early in the cycle last year, that's what's going on with Siobhan Ravel this time around. Dane Brugler has him as a top 15 player in the draft. He's usually got a pretty good idea as well. So I'm excited to watch more Siobhan Ravel. You guys should be as well. He's a really, really talented player from what I've seen so far, given a limited sample. At number 14, have the Pittsburgh Steelers going with Luther Burden. You look at that receiving core, it's just not great, is it? You lose Deontay Johnson. I like the addition of Roman Wilson. We'll see what his rookie year ends up looking like. And George Pickens is a stud, but Luther Burden has been someone who has been dominant in the slot over his career at Mizzou. Slow start to 2024, really had a great game on Saturday, and the talent is overwhelming. He's a slot fade merchant. I've seen it before, but that's a good quality to have. If you can win deep down the field in the slot and get open underneath with the ability to make guys miss with the football, that's part of what really drew me to Malik Neighbors. Luther Burden, in a similar mold in terms of skill set, even if he's maybe not quite as strong as a Neighbors, he might be a little bit faster. He's a really, really fun player, and I think for the Steelers, you might have your receiving core of the future with these guys. Burden in the slot, Wilson on the outside. Despite being smaller, he's really an outside receiver, especially if you see him run block. It's not really a concern. And he's got such great speed to space the field. And then Pickens is a bona fide wide receiver one, in my opinion. Burden kind of completes that trio and should make the offense really, really fun to watch. Who knows who the quarterback's going to be, but I think Burden certainly would help them out. At number 15, have the Cleveland Browns going Mykel Williams. First edge off the board. And to be honest, it's a really big competition for it. I really think these top four, especially Williams, Carter, and Pierce, are kind of in play to be the first edge off the board. And that could be at number 1. It maybe could be at number 15, although this feels a little bit low. For sure feels low, but I just struggled to find them a fits here in the top 10 and even just outside that as well. But I think the first edge goes off the board. The Browns have been searching for a pair to help out Myles Garrett for a long time. And I think Mykel Williams could be that guy. And that's not to say that I don't like Alex Wright, because I do. But I think maybe he's more of a situational player, whereas Mykel Williams could be a down-to-down guy. He's got very, very good athleticism and exceptional size at 6'5", 265, 270. He's big, fast, strong. That's the meta of guys that go very high in the draft nowadays. We saw with Trayvon Walker going all the way up to number 1. Williams is kind of similar, and he could get a lot more hype, a lot more helium than this and really rise to the top of the class. At number 16, I love Boye Mafe. He's already taken a huge step in 2024, but you don't necessarily have to be done. And I think a guy like Abdul Carter could really help that. He's moving full-time edge in 2024. He's got a ton of juice as a pass rusher. He's really not bad in space either. He's an exceptional athlete, a real game changer, and you could see it from really the moment he stepped on the field as a freshman at Penn State. This guy is a freak. He's a stud, and I think the Seahawks get a big piece to their defense here with Abdul Carter. And then number 17 are the Falcons. Also, upgrading edge. We've got 3 straight edge rushers after not one in the top 14, and I'm going James Pierce from Tennessee. A ton of juice as a pass rusher as well. He's got exceptional burst, hasn't done much in 2024. It's very early on in the season. If you watched him last year at Tennessee, he was pretty dominant at times, and this has the makings of a future star. They really needed edge going into the 2024 season. They drafted Michael Penix in the top 10. Pierce could be the first-round edge that you so desperately wanted and needed at number 17. Dolphins at 18. I'm going with an upgrade on the interior defensive line, and I'm going to go with Tyleik Williams out of Ohio State. Certainly in play to be the first interior defensive lineman off the board, and I think the Dolphins could be searching for that Christian Wilkins replacement. They've got a lot of speed. It's a really fast team, not a really physical team. They need to upgrade the trenches really on both sides of the ball, but that defensive interior stands out. I think Tyleik Williams is a pretty good fit. Chargers at 19, going Malachi Starks. I wanted to get him off the board early. I really struggled to find a spot for a safety. That's the thing that makes this challenging. This is a guy that can also play in the slot. Malachi Starks is a freak. He's probably, right now, going to end up being a top 5 or 10 player for me in the draft quite comfortably. He is a game changer at Georgia. He was great last year. He started 2024 really strong. This safety class in general is actually very good. Kevin Winston is a really great player. Billy Bowman is a ball hawk. Lathan Ramsey was actually pretty good last year. Rod Moore was pretty good last year. You know, this is a class. Andrew Makuba could end up being a first-round pick as well. He's been playing fantastically. But safeties and slot corners typically just don't go very high. But he's been great. Jahdae Barron, of course, as well, but he might be listed here at corner, which makes sense for 2024 if you've watched Texas. But Malachi Starks is so good. I want him to be like a top 10 pick just because it's cool. See, a safety goes so high. You guys may know that I love safeties. It's tough to get them really high in the draft. It really is. Just not a position we see get drafted super highly. And the Chargers might seem like slightly weird of a fit, I would say, but I think Starks is a starter there and a star there. He's got both in his name, and he could also just slide into the nickel and be a good player there. I really, really like Malachi Starks. I think you upgrade your defense by selecting him here at 19. He's a falling star, and you draft him. A lot of star references there. Bucks at number 20. I'm going to Tacario Davis. Just corner kind of stands out as a need, and Tacario Davis, if he really bounces back into form, I think will be a first-round pick. He's got exceptional size, very good athleticism at 6'4", 190. I think it'd absolutely be a first-round pick for those reasons. Saints at 21. Is there a team playing better than the Saints right now? Yeah, you blow out the Panthers. It's the Panthers, whatever. And then you go out and dominate the Cowboys. Is the Saints team for real? Derek Carr's playing on an otherworldly level right now. You got to really shout out Clint Kubiak. This offense has been crazy good, and I think he's a big reason for that. But there's also a chance that he's going to be taking a head coaching job somewhere next year. Of course, new offensive coordinator for the Saints. Who was there one before? He was there for a while. Pete Carmichael? Something like that. I can't quite remember. But Clint Kubiak's done a great job already in 2024. That being said, you still need to upgrade that O-line. I know you took Talisa Fuanga in the top 15 or 20 last year. Hopefully he ends up being a great player, but I don't think you're done. And Ariante Ursary, hopefully didn't butcher that too badly. I think that's right. At this early stage in the year, it's tough to get a pronunciation on everybody. Not every school has a pronunciation guide on their website, which is frustrating. But Ariante Ursary, again, another big tackle, 6'6", 330. They seem to get bigger every year. Could end up being a first-round pick, and he played very well last year. If he takes a step up, he's definitely going to be a first-round pick. So we have him going here at number 21. Number 22, have the Green Bay Packers. We're going to corner. We're going Denzel Burke. He's got very good skills in man coverage. Eric Stokes is going to be a free agent. Denzel Burke, I think, makes sense there at number 22. Somebody that can play on the outside. You're not really looking for a nickel at this point after the 2024 NFL Draft. At number 23, have the Jets. Yes, they could use a quarterback. I don't know what's going on with Aaron Rodgers. I have no idea what to think about anything going on there. The Jets is such a weird team. I don't know how I'm going to mock for them the entire year, but for right now, I'm going Harold Perkins. He's a really good player who's kind of fallen in the draft a little bit here, but he's a very good athlete. The only concern with him is he kind of positionless at 6'1", 225. He's been great off the edge before, but that's not an NFL edge rusher at that size. He's not big enough, but is he good enough off the ball to be an off-ball linebacker? It's a little bit weird, but if you look at the Jets, they're a team that has kind of really made these undersized linebackers popular. They take big safeties and say, you play linebacker now. Harold Perkins, I think, would fit in really well with his size and speed and be a great player in the front seven for the Jets. So I could also see, drafting an edge rusher, maybe Nick Scorton makes sense there. Maybe even a quarterback. You look at one of these guys down the board like Cam Ward, Connor Wigman, I have not been impressed with in 2024, but Cam Ward is someone that could be in play to be a first-round pick, and the Jets at 23 could make sense depending on what happens with Rodgers. We just don't know yet. So could I do that preemptively? Yes, but we're going to go Harold Perkins for now. 24, have the Bengals going with a running back in Ashton Jeanty. The offense is not quite the same without Joe Mixon. Ashton Jeanty is maybe going to be a Group of 5 Heisman winner. He's an exceptional player. He's torched everybody he's played, whether that's Georgia Southern or Oregon. I mean, he's been incredible against everybody he's played. He's got great speed, great ability to make guys miss. He is a freak player. At 5'9", 215, he's built sturdy, and that's probably why his contact balance is so great. This is a great, great, great player. I also considered Colston Loveland at this spot, who's another great player. Definitely, I would say, the best tight end in the class. Jeanty maybe is the best running back in the class for me right now, and somebody asked on Twitter. I answered with Jeanty 1, Omarion Hampton 2, and then, it gets really tough to rank these guys. I really like Quinshon Judkins. Travion Henderson is great. Ollie Gordon's been a little bit weird to start 2024. Kyle Monangai's been dominant. I like Jaden Ott a lot last year. This is a really, really solid running back class. Donovan Edwards had a ton of hype before Rocket Sanders, but even Nick Singleton, but they've kind of lost that a little bit. But Jeanty is an incredible player and worthy of a first-round pick. As I've said before, I think you do draft running backs in the first round. When the talent matches the spot, absolutely. You just maybe don't extend those guys. But if you can draft them in the first round, get the fifth-year option, get them for their entire prime, why is that a bad thing? Running backs do matter. They are valuable when they are elite, right? Like you can say, oh, well, you might be able to get 80% of this good running back. You might be able to get 80% of what he is. Why would you waste a first-round pick there? You could say that about a lot of different positions. Is running back the most replaceable position in the league? Yes, because a lot is, reliant on the O-line. But if you have a back that can make guys miss, go through defenders, get yards after contact, and break runs consistently, that's a really valuable player. And we've seen what good running backs can do to an offense. I would take Jeanty in the first round for sure. Ravens might even be upset that Jeanty's off the board because they could consider a running back. I don't hate the running back room, but Henry's not going to be around forever. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Also, short-term deal for him, which, obviously makes sense. We're going to go to offensive line. Right tackle is a really bad position for the Ravens. And I think Wyatt, and you can't even rely on Ronnie Stanley either at this point, but Wyatt Millam, I think, could be, or Milam, I'm not sure on that. Could be in play to be a first-round pick, one of the best tackles in the draft, and you'd be playing him at right tackle here. Right tackle is a bad spot for the Ravens right now. You're hoping you can develop Roger Rosengarten. That's a hope. Faalele, I don't think, can do it, but you could end up taking a first-round tackle. The Ravens are a really good team, despite getting off to an 0-2 start. I think they're still about as good as anybody in the AFC. I think they're going to be picking somewhere around this spot anyway. But it's tough to say what position they would even target. This is a really, really solid team. Cowboys at 26. I'm doing what I did last year, which is doing something that I would hate to have happen, which is the Cowboys going with the Texas player. I'm going 007, Isaiah Bond. He's got about as much speed as you could ever ask for at the position. Texas is just building a track team every single year. Last year with Worthy, of course. Now with Isaiah Bond. Adonai Mitchell was a 4.35 guy at the Combine. Matthew Golden can really run. Silas Bolden can really run. Ryan Wingo and Jonte Cook can really run. Ryan Niblett. So much speed at Texas right now. And Isaiah Bond is probably faster than everybody. He is a super freak athlete. and is quite a good route runner as well. I really like Isaiah Bond. I think he's going to continue to ascend as Texas continues to do well in 2024. Hook him. Wouldn't want to see him go to the Cowboys, but at the same time, I think it's certainly a fit that makes sense. Running back also could be in play as well. Really good running back class. Cowboys could take a running back. It's not really a great situation for them. I mean, if you're going to be giving snaps to Ezekiel Elliott in 2024, running back's going to be in play. And I know, some other guys in there, Rico Dowdle, but that doesn't stop you from taking your running back, in my opinion. Neither does Deuce Vaughn. We can go on and on and on with the Cowboys running back depth chart. Cowboys took Isaiah Bond, Lions up at 27, and Nick Scorton is just a player that makes sense to me here. Starting edge rusher, he and Aiden Hutchinson could be a really good combo. Eagles at 28. This is where things start to get interesting because it's another really, really good team, and you struggle to find holes for them. This is just a super talented everything. I think linebackers may be a position that stands out as something that could be upgraded. Corner, they took a bunch of shots in 2024. It's tough to say what the Eagles really even need. Wide receiver, I think, is going to be something that's in play as well. And they're not bad there. They just maybe don't have exceptional depth. So what do you do if you're Philadelphia, where your needs are not necessarily anything in particular? You could always look to upgrade, edge or defensive line. And we see them do that time and time again. And corner still could be in play. Wide receivers in play. What does that mean? It's probably just best player available at a position that makes some sense. I don't think you're going to take Colston Loveland when you have Dallas Goedert, but it really just probably does come down to BPA. You're not going to take a running back here after paying Saquon, but there are some really good players in this draft. Could always go back to the interior, maybe take a Tyler Booker. The Eagles, as I mentioned, are just a tough team to mock for. And maybe this is a good spot for the first linebacker off the board, and that's what we're going to do here. I'm going to give them Jalen Walker from Georgia. He's a really talented player. We know the Eagles are building a Georgia super team anyway. So Walker goes off the board for me there at number 28. At number 29, we have the Houston Texans. It's another really, really solid team. Their pass rush is ferocious. I think you could potentially look to upgrade that offensive line. And we're going to go Tyler Booker here. I think he could be a potential plug-and-play starter. I think you've been a little bit upset by what Kenyon Green has offered you, but Booker can compete to be a starter at some point. And at number 29, I think that's kind of what you're shooting for. At number 30, got the Buffalo Bills. It's hard to not just go receiver or corner for them. Those are positions to me that can stand out as potential needs. So that's kind of where I might look to go here. Emeka Ibuka is quite good. Kind of waiting to see which of these other receivers is going to take a big step up. I mean, Trey Harris is producing at a crazy rate. Nick Anderson's very good at Oklahoma, as is Deion Burks, a transfer, of course, from Purdue. It's a decent receiver class, for sure. I mean, you've got a lot of guys that could end up being first-round picks, and it's a position that we see getting drafted very, very highly. But you know what? Let's go to corner. I'm going to go Jahdae Barron. He was maybe the best nickel corner in college football in 2023, and now he's playing safety, he's playing boundary, he's doing it all. Really love Jahdae Barron. Hook 'em horns. He's probably been my favorite player at Texas over his time there. He's a stud, and the Bills just get a really, really good player with some versatility in the back end. Can really never have too much of that. 49ers at 31. It's another really, really talented team. What do you do here if you are the San Francisco 49ers? Corner could be in play. Safety, I think, could potentially be in play as well. And that's actually where I'm going to go. I don't know that Hufanga is going to be there long term. So Kevin Winston Jr., I think, is a player that makes sense at this spot just because he's so good. You get somebody that's just fantastic and rangy, athletic in the back end. As we get to the Chiefs at 32, it's tough to find needs for the Chiefs. Tackle kind of always seems to be in play. But Kingsley Suamataia might be that guy of the future, at least at left tackle, even if we don't really believe in Juwan Taylor on the other side. Receiver seems like it'd always be in play, but you just took Xavier Worthy in the first round. Is Hollywood Brown going to be there long term? Who could know? There are a lot of questions about where the Chiefs would actually go with this pick. And again, it's kind of like best player available. We're going to end up going with Deion Walker here at Kentucky. He is a really weird player. because I'm going to show you his height and weight, and you're like, okay, I know what type of guy this is. This is a run-stuffing nose tackle, and I can't click on him at this point, but anyway, he's huge. He's like 6'6", 330-ish. He's something in that neighborhood. He's not necessarily just a run-stopping nose tackle. He is a finesse pass rusher, off to a bit of a slow start in 2024, but has some freak-type upside and could be a really, really good player in the future. So we address the interior. He gets to play next to and learn from Chris Jones. That's a pretty good combo, and that says a lot about his future development. He could end up being a top 15 selection. Deion Walker was really, really good in 2023, and that's a lot of what this is at this point. It's very early in the 2024 season for both pro and college. It's projection. It's taking last year into account. This will change a lot, but that is Mock Draft Monday on September 16th. Things will change a lot, but that's what I got right now. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.